So Judy, being involved in the HEAL project, why do you think design thinking is important to health?
Look, I think design thinking is important to health for many reasons. First of all, because I see the design thinking as human-centred design, and of course, health's all about people. So it's all about people who are often going through some traumatic events, sometimes for themselves or their family. They're uncomfortable, there's a lot of uncertainty, they don't really know what's happening to them, they're in an environment that's actually very foreign. So there's all these possibilities that really throw them a bit off kilter. So I think design thinking in terms of what's happening with the person, what's happening with their family, what's happening in this context, making that simple, usable, friendly is essential. And often we're all so busy. I guess I've been involved a bit in health myself, and you're there for a purpose, and it might be treatment, might be diagnosis, but really the person there is still there. And so design thinking really bridges that gap, helps people see, okay, the first thing we need to do is actually relax this person a little, let them know that we're listening. And certainly we don't have all the time in the world, but there are many ways of doing that. So I think it's essential for the person. I also think clinicians, because they work with people all the time, make a real difference. And so I think that, and I guess, and we've all seen that clinicians who use design thinking, particularly in the health context, really can make a difference. And so there's both of those. And then, of course, the whole environment. I mean, there's lots of good studies that show design thinking's made a difference in terms of how an environment is established, how it's used. And all those things, sometimes they're very small, but they just make people feel very much at home. So, I mean, I think design thinking is essential for pretty much any professional, let alone a health professional who's there when people are often at their most vulnerable. So I'm a great advocate for design thinking.
Yeah, that's a really great reminder, because you forget, I think, that for most people, a hospital is a foreign environment.
Yay.
Yeah.
You know?
And they're so vulnerable. Like they're so worried.
It's quite stressful.
It's about like PICU, only those children who are just so sick, and some.
It's often the worst moment of your life, or one of the bad times.
Yes.
And so, and the clinicians are there to give the healthcare. But if we can use design thinking to support that, whether it's redesigning the environment, systems, processes, products, whatever it might be, it's kind of that additional
bonus sort of
additional tool in your backpack.
It makes such a difference.
In the PICU project, I think just seeing the clinicians in that project, they really valued the fact that they had time to step away and actually think about their patients in a different way. So I think that's valuable in itself, is actually having that moment to rethink.
And actually, if we just talk a moment about like disciplines and different disciplines. So often, clinicians, whether it's a nurse, a physio, OT, doctor, whatever it might be, so trained in their own sort of
expertise.
But they really value the design expertise. Whether that's architecture, interior design, interaction design, visual communication, fashion, whatever it is. The disciplines that perhaps clinicians are not very familiar with, we can all see the value of each other's skills and coming together. First off, we have to learn a common language.
Indeed. Design thinking.
Language is a big thing.
Language and acronyms.
It's a challenge.
But once we get past that, and we have to develop that kind of way of working together, it's just such an impact, right?
Yeah.
What I love, have you seen that the Kelly Creative Confidence video, and they show you this photo of what happened with an MRI machine for children and how they turned it into a pirate ship. And so kids had to be really still, and they were told, or else the pirates will hear you and they'll find you. And so then right at the end, the little girl comes up to a mummy and says, "Mummy, can we come back tomorrow?"
Yeah.
Hello?
The power of
She enjoyed it.
right?
Yeah, the power of storytelling, the power of arts, creative, design-led approach.
And like making it bigger than people. That's
thinking
so powerful.
that kids will really engage in that story, or that's being part of a
and up till then, I mean, kids had to be sedated. It was a very slow process, so everybody was frustrated. They didn't want to do it, and so parents are feeling bad because here's their child who's actually a bit disturbed. So, I think design thinking is certainly for health.
That's right. I mean, and we did our own version of that here too. Queenstown Children's Hospital.
Yes.
You see the walls before on the floors of the 6th floor, and then we co-designed and installed the murals that of parrots having fun, parrots at play, and already working these stories of how the speech therapists are coming down and using that space and interacting with the walls. And there's playful wayfinding. There's a real sense of arrival. People know, feel more welcome to the space.
Exactly.
And
this is where I want to be.
That's right. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's a great example of sort of creative design with innovative placemaking.
Yep. And experience.
A sense of play.
Yeah, exactly.
I am an interior designer, so I really value that process of understanding the users better to then design better environments. I don't think that happens enough.
It's your bread and butter, really, isn't it?
And it's quite telling when you see environments that really haven't. They may have done a bit of focus groups or whatever, but not to the extent where they really understand how processes work in that environment.
Yes. I mean, and we appreciate that, I guess the constraints of finances and design decisions and things like that, but actually putting a lot more thought and priority on how spaces are used and designed for use, flexible use. And I think we've seen that through COVID.
And how they make people feel.
Correct. Doing all those things, I think that will be the future of the design of healthcare spaces.
Absolutely.
As well, let's not talk about technology, actually, otherwise we're here all day.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's not. We can talk about technology another day. But I wanted, Judy, do you want to tell us a little bit about the origins of design thinking?
Well, as you know, design thinking and doing has been around for centuries, but I guess more recently, probably about 15 years ago, IDEO, that really big design company that we all know and love, started thinking about what is it that we're doing, not just in terms of products, but in terms of services. And so Tim Brown, who was then the CEO of IDEO, wrote this article in Harvard Business Review, and that tends to be the one that everybody talks about, where he talks about thinking in designerly ways, combining the needs of individuals, the possibilities in the environment, and of course the viability of the organisation. So I think he and his company more broadly really moved this whole notion of what design is possible of doing to many more contexts, certainly in the business context, which is probably and management context, but certainly in education. I mean, we know all the D-School work that's come out of them, but it really was those designers who got together and said, listen, this just makes such a difference. We need to really share this with others. So that's really how I see. And design thinking, of course, happens in different places around the world. So there's different almost origin stories, but that probably is the dominant one for Western society.
And I think designers learn how to design, but they don't often know how to tell someone how to design. So I think the design thinking processes and skills and toolkits that have been developed by the likes of IDEO and Stanford D-School are really valuable for people that are non-designers to really get their hands on and actually
to explore and really participate in.
And
the great literature that's around these days.
So we will share these books, but this is the Design Thinking Toolbook. It's amazing.
Great book.
It's literally
designed by or written by some people from D-School.
And it literally just walks through all the kind of tools that you can use in the design thinking workshop and with examples and online templates. So there's a lot of resources out there to do it. I don't think that doesn't, these are important and are critical, but you still need
you still need the mindset.
Correct.
And you need the facilitation. And you
absolutely.
really need, I think, a bit of a guide.
And there's no one skill or tool to use. You have to obviously look at each project on its own merit.
That's right, and come together as a group and decide, okay, what kind of tools and methods and approaches are we going to use, like designing any kind of project. And so these offer a basis, particularly for perhaps non-designers who might be doing design thinking. But it's really important to come together as a group and to respect, I guess, discipline, expertise, and knowledge.
Absolutely, I think it's really important to have a great facilitator, particularly when you're starting that
and
vision.
A timekeeper.
Yes. Keeping people under pressure.
Because and keep moving.
And do you want to talk about why pressure is important when it comes to creativity, Natalie?
I think pressure and deadlines is something that I've grown up with as an interior designer. But I guess essentially it really gives people constraints, and people design better with more constraints. If you let people design and give them, nothing to go on, you can't.
It's too woolly and wild.
That's right.
Whereas if you have some
the more constraints, the better, and particularly time is one of those. I think people work really well under pressure. Plus, you don't get people going off on their own tangents. You really need to focus on the task at hand and what they're actually got to achieve in a time frame. So
one of the methods I like to use, a colleague and I came up with, is like that theory storming. So you actually instruct people to be the voice of a particular perspective. So I'd put sometimes a physical hat too, but a hat on duty and say, radio, I want you to be the voice of bioflick design, that is designing with nature in mind. Or I want you, Natalie, to be the voice of a child with a disability. Or I'm the voice of a parent. And so you respond to the challenge from that perspective. And I think that can be a really powerful way to get people out of thinking like themselves, and actually
absolutely.
thinking through the lens of somebody else, and that's that empathy.
Role play is really good for that too. So we saw a bit of that in our CEQ Fellows
scenarios.
Workshops.
They were very good.
And just the act of going through a scenario by doing it really gives you that experiential quality of what that is about and what people are feeling and doing. So that's another great one that we've used quite a bit.
We are pushing people past their comfort zone.
Absolutely.
And ourselves, actually pushing ourselves past their comfort zone too. Because, that's where growth and all the positive things happen, right?
Yeah. I mean, prototyping's great because you can get people to make things, you can get people to draw things, all that visualization skills, but also like performative skills, really getting them to act out what might happen and therefore, really understanding the pains and gains.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we've kind of covered this, but how does design thinking make a difference to health, Judy, do you think?
Well, I think we're sort of pursuing the same issue. I think it makes a difference to health context in small and large areas. I think it makes a difference on a ward. I think it makes a difference to a team, but also in the environment, as you used some examples before. I also think sometimes clinicians are sort of on the edge of that. Sometimes they have some ideas they'd really like to pursue, and giving them almost the permission or the challenge of coming together to maybe, what if? Let's be imaginative. Let's put away all those constraints about resources and time. If you have, unlimited budget, or what would... what
it's
would Branson
really
do? What would
focus, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of negatives in healthcare, but focusing on what can we do better is just so empowering.
It flips the mindset, flips the approach, and then it flips the energy, which actually then results in outcomes and in change. And that's all leadership teams know that actually we have to work together and we get a lot more accomplished if we're positive and proactive, and these are the kind of tools that make it happen.
And also I think it sees the whole person. Like there's a functional thing about we want people to get well in the best way they can, but also we want them to feel good about it, and we want the family to be part of that, because really they're the ones going forward, they're the ones who are there every day, and so that they have a positive feeling towards the health environment they've had some assistance with.
Really good point.
It's like a
and also
building
when
bridges.
they leave.
So the story of care that they tell is going to be a positive one. And so then that results
and there's always ups and downs,
Yeah.
but on the whole, they couldn't get better care than
That's
they've
right.
had here.
And you can use design thinking as a tool to make sure that our care culture is delivering
alive
what we
and
want.
well.
Yes, alive and well. And the
Yeah.
story of care that people take away from having been in a hospital or healthcare facility is one that we're all proud of. And if there is something that's wrong, we address it. We don't hide
let
it.
us know.
And
we'll
we fix
address it.
And we work together, with consumers, with carers, with families, work in partnership to solve these problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very exciting.
Yeah, and so in terms of resources, we've got resources on our website.
Yeah, loads of resources.
This is a great report about all of the projects that we're involved in the HEAL project.
That's right. It gives a bit of a summary. This video is a resource. Even just Googling design thinking for health.
Oh, there's so much. Yes, indeed. I was putting that together this morning, and even when in terms of health environments, not just in terms of health relationships and teams. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot around. And you know what? I reckon it's going to be lots more, because that's what all these resources are saying. People are hungry for how do we
true.
do this.
Yeah.
I also think it's really good if people have a potential to experience this with others. I think, as you mentioned before, these are really quite useful in terms of coming up with new methods and approaches, but it isn't until you really experience.
Yeah.
Once you
design.
experience it, then you
Yes.
are a convert.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Yes.
exactly.
So that's our mission and vision. Is that every clinician in Queensland and every administrator
Well,
and
go
leadership
for
team.
broke, I reckon.
That's right.
Yeah.
Come and have some first-hand experience
Yes.
in design thinking, design doing.
Yes.
Upskill themselves. Take some of these tools and
Yes.
ideas, because you can take little parts of it.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
I think just jump in. I mean, once you jump in, you've got your team, you've got a problem, then you can think about what tools you need and how you're going to deliver it. And that's the easy part. The hard part is actually building the team and getting people.
What's that saying? Is
involved in
that
that
perfection is the enemy of progress or something? You know, and I know that, you know, in a hospital healthcare setting, things do have to be perfect. But from a design-led
yes.
approach, actually, we want people to be a little bit more comfortable with taking, you know, risks that don't put it, that no one's going to be harmed from these risks, but actually just being a little bit more experimental and a bit
Yeah.
more brave.
And if they
thinking
fail, then
so
try
what?
again.
That's right.
Yeah.
But keep on trying and think outside the box.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a senior nursing administrator in a private hospital not far from here who was really concerned about the discharge process of cardiac patients. And while she'd raised this a few times, it's not the sort of thing you're allowed to talk about. So she worked with her colleagues on a whiteboard and said, you know, how might we improve this discharge process? And so they came, and so she almost did a bit like we do with PICU. So it's almost like remote, because they're so busy, they never have time to meet. So she developed some different processes and really made a difference.
So that's really good. So people know the how might we question is kind of the
Central.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. How might we
Defining
take
it.
some
Do-
action
do
to
X, Y,
achieve
Z.
our objectives?
So you could just even just write that on a whiteboard
Yes.
on
Yeah.
on your
Yes.
hallway. Like I know Sunshine Coast Hospital have done, they've got a whiteboard in the ED that is kind of for idea brainstorming. And so you can literally write, how might we write your project, and then just have people
Yep.
put ideas
And
there.
so then she obviously themed those ideas, and they then got people to vote in their spare time.
Yeah.
About 3 votes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was like a moving whiteboard, if you know, a moving story.
Yeah.
And then she said, okay, can we make some time to actually try out some of these things? It just made such a difference.
Yeah.
So getting people together
Yep.
Yeah.
and actually just getting started.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think one thing I learned from the PICU project is choosing ways of doing things to engage staff and families that are time friendly, because everyone is stressed, everyone has no time.
Time poor.
Everyone has different shifts.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to think of strategies that engage all these people, but there might be at different times
and
or in
acknowledge
different
those
ways.
constraints.
But also engagement that is impactful and for a purpose. So
Yes, exactly.
One of the
Yes.
projects we did, we asked clinicians and patients to take photographs of what it was like to have in the rehab ward.
Yes.
At both 2 different hospitals, and then we took photographs of that and shared that and exhibited that on the walls of it's at Ipswich Hospital at the moment. And on the day we installed it, you know, clinicians were walking past and going, I actually, you know, Bruno Hospital is only 45 minutes away, but they hadn't been. And they were like, I didn't know they did that there. Oh, look how great that is. So already they were
captured all
learning.
that information.
They were learning
Yes.
about different processes. They're like, I didn't know that they were doing
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
you know, this activity there. Oh, look, I see how they're doing this. That's really cool. So
visual
communication
information.
is really
right,
important.
Yeah.
because no one's
Yeah.
got time, but
Yeah.
actually you might pause and you
Find
might,
a way.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
and,
nice.
And kind of sneakily kind of build that kind of sense of community.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
knowledge
that
exchange.
we share. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did this work for you? And
Yes,
Yeah.
and just kind of, I saw a photograph where you did that. That looked really cool. Tell me
Yeah.
more about it. It's
Yeah.
kind of that prompt for knowledge exchange. And these kind of things are happening
Yes.
across our healthcare
Yes.
system.
Yes.
But in the world that we live, we've got to be doing it in different
Conscious
ways.
and
We
make
actually
sure they
had
happen.
to do that for the PICU project. We had it organised
Indeed.
a workshop
Yes.
to
Then
bring
we-
staff and
COVID.
families together, and then we had a lockdown.
Yeah.
So we had to completely pivot to another process,
Mode altogether.
which
Yeah.
actually ended up working much
Much
better,
better.
than what
Much
a workshop
better.
would have done, because everyone's time poor.
Yeah.
So it was fabulous. We had a marketplace where people could just drop in when they had time, when they felt like they wanted to chat, and it
Much
worked
richer.
beautifully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Customised to that group.
Describe the marketplace to me more.
So the marketplace we set up in the space that we were thinking about reconfiguring
exactly
as a village. And so we took that village metaphor and we used that metaphor to then develop these engagement strategies that actually suited.
Almost like a town square.
Yeah, town square approach.
And they left little notes or something, didn't they? Is that right?
Yeah, we had these affirmation puzzles where people could, write or draw on little discs and then put them up on the wall and make a mural. We had photos up on the wall where people could put comments on them
like
to
those photos
talk about what was of concern for them. So it was a great strategy in asking people what they felt, but not time consuming and fun at the same time, and engaging a conversation, because a lot of the parents really just want to talk to someone.
Yes. And that isolation that they need to overcome. And who do you tell all this problematry? Like, you've worn out your partner, you've worn out your family, but you really still need to talk to someone.
Exactly.
So, I mean, design really is just putting some different lenses, different
Absolutely.
toolkits into trying to solve some of these problems.
A human-centred approach.